everybody. Welcome back to the Psychedelic Scene podcast. I'm your host, Jill Sitnick. Just think of me as your psychedelic big sister. And today's session is with Stephan Kirby, or Kirby as he likes to be known. And he is from the Mindscape Institute. And what is really cool about today's conversation is what I like to call a low-dose protocol for the psychedelic 5, or 5-MeO-DMT. Many folks know of 5 as the most powerful psychedelic out there that can kind of blast people out into space. But when you look at 5 from a trauma perspective, a low-dose protocol is very, very interesting and something I've tried myself. This was a fantastic conversation from someone extremely experienced in the space. And so with no further ado, let's get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Psychedelic Scene podcast. I am very excited today because I'm talking to an old buddy. I have met Stephan Kirby at a couple of conferences, and I'm very excited about the stuff that he is doing with 5 and some low dosing. So, hi, Stephan. How you doing? How do you want to be referred to today during today's podcast?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Just Kirby. Like I've shared with people, my name's Stephan Kirby, but everybody, for the most part, just knows me as Kirby, so it's nice and easy.
I wanted you to put that out there so that nobody thought I was like renaming you or anything like that. All right, folks, buckle up. I'm going to read Kirby's bio to just get ready to see the superstar that we're working with. All right. Kirby is the founder of Mindscape Psychedelic Institute, a training organization dedicated to trauma-informed 5-MeO-DMT facilitation and psychedelic integration. He's a facilitator, an educator, and an author, kind of sounds familiar there, who has spent nearly a decade helping individuals and practitioners navigate non-ordinary states of consciousness with safety, integrity, and with deep presence. Kirby and his wife, Amber Kirby, who is an LMFT, look, I did that correctly, developed the world's first embodiment protocol. We're going to be using that word throughout today's podcast. A structured 6-month integration process designed to support lasting transformation after 5-MeO-DMT rather than chasing peak mystical experiences. And we're going to be talking about the differences between those. Their approach blends non-dual philosophy, nervous system regulation, and practical behavioral change. Their mission is simple: to shift the psychedelic paradigm from big experiences to embodied transformation, where awakening becomes a way of living, not just a moment that you had. I just need to take a deep breath with that because I don't think I could have written anything more lovely. Thank you so much, Kirby, for being here today.
I appreciate you having me, and I apologize. The beauty and the brains of the operation, my wife was unable to join us, but hopefully I'll make her proud.
Maybe another time. All right. Well, so for our audience, can you give us your origin story and kind of how you found yourself talking on the Psychedelic Scene podcast?
Origin story.
Origin story.
Yeah, I think for a short story, like probably many folks, had a pretty difficult childhood, carried that trauma into my adult life. That programming, that trauma was absolutely impacting the way that I was showing up as a husband, as a father, as a friend. I spoke with some therapists and went kind of what's referred to as the traditional route, but I don't call it the traditional route because current psychotherapy is only about 130 years old, but that's another conversation. But I tried what people would consider the traditional path and just didn't have really good results. I saw a YouTube clip, hey, do an ayahuasca ceremony, get 20 years worth of healing on a weekend. And I'm like, that sounds like my speed. Let's speed this game up. And, interesting at the time on the outside looking in, people would have considered me successful, have a beautiful family, financially okay, right? All the things that people would consider to be, why are you struggling? But again, that didn't change the way that I felt inside. So I tried to take the 20 years of therapy in a weekend at an Aya ceremony, which was decent. But it was the beginning of the awakening, the beginning of the unwinding of who I thought I was. I did that for a couple years, was eventually invited in to start working with them and started training in that space. And I just remember the shaman that I was training with, she came to me one day. She had some personal struggles. She went and did a bufo ceremony, which is, consists of the molecule of 5-MeO-DMT. And she's like, you should try this. And I'm like, well, what'd you see? Well, we're kind of like, what were the visuals? She's like, didn't see anything. And I was like, well, was it scary? She's like, absolutely terrifying. And I'm like, I think that's like the worst marketing pitch on a psychedelic I've ever heard. I don't think I want to do that at all. But the universe works in mysterious ways. I actually flew to Florida for just a traditional NN dimethyltryptamine, NN DMT with the machine L's. I was interested in that, and I showed up, and they didn't have that. They didn't have any more of it. And I remember again just feeling it in my body, the frustration and disappointment, and like kind of voicing that to the people. Like, I flew here, I got the rental car, the hotel, I paid the money. Like, where's the experience? And I just remember this small, beautiful Spanish, like mama vibes. She just looked up at me because I'm 6'7" almost. She looked up at me and she goes, "You need bufo." And I'm like, "I don't think I do." She's like, "You need bufo." And I'm like, okay. And I just remember very specifically, again, at the place I was at in my life was desperation is what I like to refer to, because then I think that's a lot of the folks that we work with. And I mean that in a super compassionate way. I was like, I hear some guy screaming in the distance. So I'm like, what am I signing up for? And then this part of my brain was like, I'd rather die here in the grass than go home being the person I am. And that just allowed me to just kind of surrender into this huge experience that I didn't understand, didn't even understand afterwards. I just knew something big had happened, or the experience was big, but I wasn't sure what to do with it. And that just sent me down the rabbit hole of trying to understand that particular molecule. And then kind of same pattern. I did it pretty consistently for about 1.5 years. They invited me to train with them. I started training with them. And then, being the kind of questioning person I am, I just started kind of questioning how we were doing it. And is this the best way? What could be a better way? And then even asking myself, how can I verbalize how it's helped me? Right? I can't just say, well, I took the medicine. Well, then what? Like, what actually specifically did you implement to help shift your perspective on yourself? And then off to the races from there.
So I asked, how did you get to the point of creating a training program of your own?
The training almost became a necessity for a couple different reasons. One, I'm here in the Midwest. I was the only facilitator here with that medicine, specifically 5-MeO. And even the folks I was training with were like, you need to bring it to that space. And my ego loved that. I'm like, yes, I get to bring it to this space at that stage. And so as I started working with people, again, it's a small area. I would serve a gentleman, then he'd bring a spouse, and it would just start growing, right? And I had served a men's group, and that expanded, and it got to the point where, my wait list was pretty long. And I just started questioning the sense of, if you're doing this because you really do want to help people, you do want to be able to provide this experience to people, do you have to be the one doing it? Right? We need more good trauma-informed practitioners in this space. And I want to be very specific. We don't need more people in this space, right? There's plenty of what I will refer to, and I mean it compassionately, as the pipelighters or the drive-by 5 facilitators. Like, we don't need more of those. There's plenty of those. We need more good, compassionate, awake, conscious, trauma-informed facilitators in this space. How do we do that? And that's what started the beginning of the training program. And again, this constant bringing in a lot of my peers, a lot of folks from the 5MEO conclave to say, pick this apart. Like, how do we do it better? It's not perfect. There's no, I mean, ideally you could take people and have them in your space for 2 years, right? But that's just not logistically possible for as many people, for a lot of folks. So like, how do we create the best thing that we can create? And that began the process. And we've been, we refined it for the last 3 years. And I feel like we're in a really beautiful space with it where, I mean, I'm honored. I mean, we've got each class, probably 30% of the class is international. This last cohort, we had 3 psychotherapists from the Ukraine. So they were working with veterans. And one was literally driving to the front lines to facilitate these experiences to the people on the front line. And they were working kind of interconnected with the government because it's illegal there, but they kind of gave them a pass because they're like, how do we help these folks? So again, even that made me like question some of the protocols or some of the views that how can we use this medicine, for different purposes. So it's been neat to get just beautiful feedback from, again, international students and people all over the world to really create what I think is probably one of the best training programs in the world right now.
It's interesting, the example you just gave about folks in a very stressful situation, because we all know that psychedelics can amplify versus heal sometimes, depending on a variety of different things, to be candid. It'd be nice to be able to rubber stamp as to like, this did this. But I think one of the things I really want to talk to you about is the different protocols. And in my head, I'm thinking, I guarantee they went to some of those Ukrainian folks and they used different protocols than the general, and I'm going to be very facetious here, the general like spray and pray of just blasting someone out. So I'm curious, are you comfortable talking about different protocols, or at least not really specific protocols, maybe just your philosophy around different protocols?
Yeah, there's anything that we've been pretty blessed with the success of what we've been doing. And that's why I want to do this podcast. That's why we wrote the books. Anybody that's written a book, unless you're like, a top tier author, you're not getting rich off your books, right? Like the books aren't designed to like get rich from. I really want that information out there. And because I do want to challenge the current framework. And I also want to be very clear. It's not to say that the current framework is wrong. It's just this medicine, again, as we kind of talked about before the show started, it's 40 years in its modern use. Why not have some alternatives to the way that we're using it? Especially, my interest was, as I went back to school to get into the therapeutic space, how could we use this therapeutically? What makes more sense from a therapeutic perspective? And about 35% of our students, over the last couple of years have been therapists. So what's a safer way for them to work with this, right? Especially if you're risking your licensure, lawsuits, the legalities of it. Well, we want to destabilize as few people as possible. And so I think one of my concerns with the space is, you always hear about the love and light, you'll connect with God, you'll be one with everything. And that's best case scenario. That's a beautiful scenario. But what happens to the people that get destabilized? Right. I integrate a lot of these folks that it's 6-7 months after the experience, and they're still not able to function the way they function, even to the point where they need psychiatric medications. Right. It's a huge experience. And if you've ever had to be in a position of helping one of these folks, it should make you question, is this the right way of doing it? What's a safer way? Right. And if you kind of use the analogy of like IFS parts work, right? We've got these protector parts there for a reason. Does it make sense just to blast through them, or can we provide them a space to like uniquely and slowly adapt to what's happening, and then kind of make room for that? So it's just important. Again, I don't want any traditional facilitators to what we call the stepwise protocol is something that's pretty common. Where you start with maybe a lower dose and kind of work up to ultimately the full experience. Some people hear it as, a handshake, hug, and a kiss. I'm like, that always feels like talking like Starbucks cup sizes. It's like just small, medium, large seems easier. but that's kind of the traditional model. And again, that's been beneficial for so many people that I'm not trying to throw it under the bus. I'm just saying, well, can't we consider an alternative? And the alternative is, anybody that's had a large experience or facilitated large experience, it's not uncommon for people to have these huge experiences, these huge mystical experiences. And then 2 months later, they're back to their kind of baseline personality. And I always thought, man, the analogy I use is it's like fresh fruit dying on the vine. Like we had this opportunity, this beautiful opportunity to really turn this into something, but we missed it. And so I think the common facilitator right now is just facilitating these mystical experiences. But most people don't even know what that experience is, what to do with that experience. And I think that's where we're kind of missing some opportunities. And I know that was kind of a long way, and I didn't really get to your question, but I'll get to it. It's, again, a lot of people have these.
Yeah, you did. Small, medium, large.
Yeah, that's kind of traditional. And to me, again, a lot of people are having these big experiences and they'll come out of it. Well, I'll take a step back. What started a lot of the protocol was, I think it was my third experience. And I remember coming out of the medicine and there was this moment of like, aha, of like, oh, that's what enlightenment is, right? Just in a moment, it was fleeting, wasn't enlightened, but I got to experience that, right? So that gives you like a marker, like a pin, like, oh, that's what that experience was. And that's after years of meditation and, reading all the stuff. And it was the first time that I'm like, oh, that's what it means when your kind of ego dissolves and you're in this purely conscious state. So it was the first time that I'm like, oh, that's what the monks are going to the monasteries for 30 years to achieve, right? And I'm like, you just achieved it in 15 minutes.
Oh.
And then the thought was, how can we do this without the medicine? How can we help people get to this with minimum amounts of medicine? I should reframe it, right? You can get there without the medicine. The medicine's kind of like a potential booster, right? So that's what began it. I'm like, how else can we have these experiences or share these experiences with other people with a very specific direction of awakening, right? Of expanding our consciousness. Yeah.
It's interesting. My first experiences with Bufo and 5 were both, blast out. And it was very somatic. It was very interesting. I was still dealing with lots of trauma. That's the path I was on, was figuring out lots of trauma. And it didn't occur to me that I could navigate. Like, you can navigate MDMA, you can navigate psilocybin. It never occurred to me that I could navigate this particular medicine until I happened to go to a provider who, for any reason, I think, to be candid, messed up dosage and gave me a very low dose. Or not even a traditional low dose, but just not a dose that would really blast me out. And I found myself navigating it, and I got super, super curious. And then an opportunity came around with a couple of folks who are therapists running a very small group who said, we're going to have a low dose session. Come with an issue. I loved that. It was like, come with an issue. And very much parts were based. I had a 19-year-old protector, and that low dose protocol of, low, I think my experience was probably like low, middle, high. We got to make a joint decision every single time. There was no like forcing upon. It was literally, where are you in the process? How are you with your issue that you're working on? Where do you want to go? And I know for folks who aren't familiar with psychedelics, the idea of navigating it seems like an odd thing. You don't hear that too often, but it's a thing. You can navigate this experience depending on dosage. And I was floored that within 2 hours, I was able to navigate this very, very strong 19-year-old protector, not blast her out, simply release her from the responsibility that she really no longer had to do. And I don't know if there's a way to explain that well to people who, number one, don't know psychedelics, number two, don't know parts work. But for folks who know both of those things, like, it just clicks and people are like, okay, I can do that. That's really cool stuff. So I mean, in your work, are you seeing people, this is the issue I want to work on, and do they get further down the road of working with that issue with the different protocol?
It's a great question, and it sounds like you had a good experience, right? I think two things. I think the importance of the pace, right? So traditionally, you step in, you have this full experience, right? So let's say you have the full experience, even if you kind of stepped into it, but you have this full non-dual, interconnected, full dose experience, right? So there's two things happening. So one, you're offline, right? So you're kind of unaware of the physical surroundings. And let's say that means you're at a 10. And the person you are when you walked in the door was like 1, right? So that's your baseline personality. So as you start coming back into your body, the ego starts reformulating. Now you're at a 9 and then an 8. And it's like, so you're kind of working yourself back to your baseline personality. To me, the objective is, if you could help people work with these smaller and medium doses over a period of time, what's allowing them to happen is they're learning to drive the car, so to speak, on these medium experiences, kind of where you were. How do I use this, right? Versus I was here, so that's already an overwhelming experience, and now I'm in a completely non-ordinary state of so I'm navigating these two things, don't really know what to do with it. So if you could work people up to this larger experience, because there is benefit to the large experience, right? For most people. But if you've worked your way up over months and multiple experiences, now what happens is they have this full offline experience at a 10. Now they're at 9, 8, 7. Their nervous system has already learned to navigate that non-ordinary state. So now they're able to drive the car, so to speak, and benefit from that non-ordinary state. So they got the energetic or somatic benefit of the full experience, which it is. It's probably the most powerful energetic experience that a human can have. But now they get that kind of theralytic or therapeutic space to kind of navigate in, that they're already familiar with. Their nervous system isn't overwhelmed, right, with this double thing. So yeah, I think our approach is kind of twofold. Yes, bring your intentions, but also hold them real loose, right? Because a lot of the intentions we come with are created from our kind of programmed egoic perspective,
Stories.
right? So it's like, yeah, bring those, but let's hold them loosely and just kind of imagine we're laying on a raft, floating down the river of consciousness. Wherever it takes us, we're going to roll with it. Because just for me personally, like, my protocol is very specific for a very specific reason. And that's why it's not for everybody, right? And it's about helping people awaken, right? Like, you're not who you think you are, right? Identity isn't fixed. It's like this feedback loop, as you know, right? It's made of the habits, beliefs, and stories you tell yourself over and over. And then you become shaped by what you do or think over and over. So same as trauma, right? To me, all trauma is just a stored pattern, a conditioned loop of perception, emotion, and reaction created to keep us safe. So if we could help them develop this conscious awareness, right? Let us observe those loops instead of reliving them. Well, then the nervous system begins to like recognize this is a memory, not a threat. And then when we observe rather than react, the brain shifts from this amygdala survival circuitry, right, into the regulatory networks of the kind of prefrontal cortex. But that awareness literally wires the nervous system, which we see is reducing reactivity, increasing regulation, and allowing these old trauma patterns to kind of integrate, right? So most people that are coming, well, and with that, again, over time, awareness restores choice, and choice is freedom. People have this misconception that they have free will, right? And to some degree, but also the science shows that when they do the brain scans, they give you a choice. The brain had made the decision on the choice just a fraction of the second before the part of your brain where you make the decision, which shows it's just playing out old program. But I believe the more conscious you become, right, it allows you to then start responding to reality versus just this autonomic reaction, right? You can see the patterns. You can see, again, this, how do you tap into this awareness of who you are, right? This more conscious aspect. And then you're able to start seeing the program and seeing all the beliefs that you bring to the table. And then when you start seeing these beliefs and you're able to question the beliefs, it's like, oh, I've been doing this. I see reality this way, or I see this circumstance this way. That's not true. And if that belief isn't true, what other beliefs have I been telling myself that aren't true? And then it's like the thread that unwinds the whole quilt, right? And that to me is the process I'm most interested in, is how do we help people see that they are this programmed part through all of their conditioning, and they are reacting to reality. If you can show them the programming, then there's a chance to start unwinding it, but it's through like this conscious awareness. So yes, bring your intentions. I want to be a better husband and father. Beautiful, right? By being more conscious and noticing your patterns, that will then be the side effect. If any of that made sense.
Okay. No, I'm not. And now I know I can't touch the screen. I think I was touching it for another reason, but I'm not going to touch the freaking screen. All right. We are recording. It's okay. I will edit this out. So one of the things that practitioners, I think, don't have enough conversation about with folks who, like you kind of mentioned, there's a whole bunch of people out there who can light a pipe. There's far fewer folks who can help somebody work through the trauma. And one of the things you mentioned when we were chatting is, this isn't so much about the experience of the day. It's much more, and I have to read this because I love this line. I might have to steal it. I might have to attribute it to you. Transformation, listeners will walk away. Transformation isn't what happens on the cushion or on the mat or on the medicine. Transformation happens Tuesday morning in traffic. It's how you show up to life, relationships, discomfort, and choice moment by moment. I love that. And I don't think people very often will say to me, like, how do you know that you're healed? Or how do you know that it really helped? And I very often say, well, how are you living your life differently? Can you speak to how you kind of explain to folks? It's really not about what's happening in the medicine. It's about what happens afterward.
Yeah. And it's, again, part of my evolution is again, like even questioning some of the terms we use, right? And I haven't come to a full conclusion on this one because I use the term heal fairly often, but what I'm starting to shift to, especially with these like the protocols and the work that we're doing, is heal feels more like a linear thing, right? Like you get a cut, you put a Band-Aid on it, and then eventually that cut's healed, right? And to me, at least for my own journey, is like it is like this evolution, and it's this ongoing evolution. Anytime that I think that I've maybe healed to a point, it's like, oh, there's levels to it, right? So to me, it's like, how do we help people evolve? And that's adapting a different lifestyle, right? It's the beginning of that is, and that's the beauty of this medicine and others, but this one has a real high propensity for like this understanding or this witnessing of your, again, being this awareness or this highest conscious self, or in parts work, the big S, right? This higher aspect of yourself, and to kind of see this programming aspect of ourselves. Again, if you have 70 to 80,000 thoughts a day, they're the same thoughts that you had yesterday, which are the same thoughts that you had the day before. There's emotion attached to that. I can tell you how your day today is going to be. You're just going to continue to play out this program. It's like, if you can get people to witness this program, right, and start tapping into this higher level of awareness, everything just starts to unfold. It's like everything that they thought, like, hi, I'm Jim the accountant. It's like, yeah, kinda. That's what you do, right? And all your social labels, I'm straight, heterosexual, homosexual, white, black, like all these, like people are so tied to these identities. So to me, it's like, well, what's evolution look like? It's like recognizing that all of these things are constructs, right? Like, for example, Jill, if you grew up in Japan, you would be a completely different version of Jill than you are today, right? So that tells you that you are just a conglomeration of all these experiences to create this. Okay, that means if I change my experiences moving forward, I could be a different version of myself, which also means that what you see as yourself is not a permanent thing. It's a construct. So how do we start unwinding that and working towards ways that you want to be? And that's why I like acceptance and commitment therapy. What are your values? right? What are your values? How do we move towards what you value, or how you see yourself as far as values are structured? And again, I think what we're doing with the protocol, it's not traditional integration. I think
Okay.
this may get me in trouble, but I'm kind of okay with that.
Okay.
Integration is becoming, yeah, like psychedelic integration has kind of become, oh man, what's a good way to put it? It's
It's a safe
almost
space,
like,
Kirby. It's a safe space.
okay, it's all right. Well, let's all right. We'll go down a rabbit hole. Let's be honest with what's happening
Okay.
in this field, right? The
Okay.
term integration coach for to me has lost all of its meaning. It's become like a trendy label, this vague identity, a role that I see people slip into after a handful of journeys and like a weekend training, right? There's legit psychedelic integration people, but it's kind of like trauma informed. It's like trauma informed fishing, trauma informed yoga, trauma informed cacao. It's like it's losing a lot of like its depth to me, right? And I think
I would
people are
agree.
suffering the most because of this trend, right? So and much of what I see, kind of as integration coaching to me isn't even integration. It's people helping other people's talk about their experience. Let's interpret the symbols, process
Right.
emotions, and then kind of return to life exactly the same as before. And to me, that's not liberation. That's not transformation. And that's not what I'm most interested in, right? I'm more interested in not focusing on trying to analyze or interpret what happened during the experience, especially with five, where there isn't like usually
Right.
this visual component, right? And then trying to make meaning from it. And again, and that's valuable for some people, but it also keeps you in your head, right? So to me, it's more about embodiment, not analysis, right? So it's not about what the experience meant. It's about who you are now that you've seen it. And then it's training the body and mind to live in coherence with the truth that you touched, right? So traditional integration asks, what did you learn? The protocol asks, how are you living differently today because of it? So
Mhm.
it's just different. So the protocol's embedding very specific day-to-day tasks, weekly meetings, monthly practices, so that once you get to touch that point of like, oh, that's what awakening is, that's what enlightenment is. How do I train my body to go back to that space as often as possible? And I think that's what you articulated really well with your experience, right? In these medium high, low experiences, you have to surrender and take your body from this current state and surrender and allow it to go into a more conscious state. And then it retracts. And so what you're
Yes.
doing, because that's reality, me shoving you into a conscious space, that's not how we operate in the world, right? Like in the world, I have to be in a high beta state or a stress state and surrender into this more conscious state. So you're training your brain and body to go from a low conscious state to a high conscious state over and over and over and over. And it becomes like, oh, this is so much easier to do. Like anything that you like tie in your shoe. It's like I could take a second now, boom, more high conscious state, right? Shoving somebody into that
Yes.
conscious state isn't training them to find or how to get themselves into that conscious state. Does that make sense?
So I think what I've tried to say to some of my friends who are not into psychedelic medicine in any way, shape, or form, I think it's always good to have folks, very different people in your life. And they've kind of said, well, why do you continue to use medicine? And I said, well, number one, I had, 19 years of trauma and neglect and abuse. So that takes a while to unravel. I said, secondly, and I really love the word evolution. The way I tended to describe it was that I'm in a spiral. My mind is this really cool spiral, and there's always another spiral to discover. I'm
Yes.
ridiculously curious. The same way I go
Love
to the
that.
gym and I keep working out my body is the same way I keep wanting to kind of understand how I was put together. And I agree with you. Jill in another country would have been Jill with different parents would have been a completely different Jill. So
Yes.
I'm always very curious about who is Jill and keep getting into that. And I think too that I have gotten And I think this is true of most people who use psychedelics responsibly for self-growth work, because they're totally cool if you're using them for recreation. But for folks who are kind of in the, I really want to understand myself, I do think you need less as you keep going, because you're developing those skills of dropping into that space to do that work. And I would not have expected that. In my mind, I would have been like, oh, well, you just kind of keep needing more because you keep getting to a certain place. And for me and a couple of other people I know, it's been the complete opposite. I need far less, and I can just drop in and get the work done that I want to get done. And I find that fascinating.
Yeah, I completely agree, right? Like I haven't had a full experience in 2 years, right? And my students like, you're not doing the medicine. I'm like, on occasion, I'll take a small to medium dose just kind of as a reminder, but also to work through the protocol for some enhancements. But no, I think, and I guess just a fun story. It was it's probably been 3 years by now since I had a full experience. I did a lot of medicine, right? So I probably did couple hundred full experiences. And I don't recommend that to anybody, but I was so curious and I didn't have anybody really teaching me what to do with the experience. So I'm like, I just wanted to figure it out. And I thought, well, the more you do it, the more you'll be able to kind of figure it out. And and on the flip side of that, my wife, who's probably the most awake and conscious human I know, she's done it twice, right? So she's like the example of what good protocols can do for you, right? I'm like, that's not fair. She's only had to do it twice. And it's been years since her experience, but it's the last big one I had. I just remember coming out of the medicine and I had this thought, it's you. I don't think there's some mythical creature that was telling me anything. It was my subconscious. And the visual I got was like a big birthday gift with the big bow on it. And you could pop the top off and see what's inside. And it's like, the things that you want to know would completely disrupt how you're operating in this reality. But if you want to know them, they're in that box. Go ahead. But it's probably not going to be good for you. And then the next thought was, yeah, because you've already been given the manual to have a good life, right? Be present, move with compassion, move with kindness. And it's like, instead of really putting in the effort to integrate those the way you should, you're just trying to go back and hope that if you take enough medicine, it's just going to do all that work for you. And that's a huge misconception. Yes. And so now, similar to you, it's like, it doesn't take much for me to be able to have as much of a benefit from these medicines and as a matter of fact, I don't step into altered states that often at all anymore, because I really like kind of the energetic space that I'm in now from all the work. I'm like, why would I want to disrupt this? I'm good right now. And when I'm not, I have tools for that. But so I'm with you. And that's the goal, right? To work with people to get to that point of like, you've already got the glasses, you already see reality differently. Now you have to go, like, I'm 53. So if I just did the medicine and I was integrating myself, I'm like, you've got 53 years of programming. You now have a brand new set of lenses to see reality. Now you have to go experience reality all over again. So you will see it differently with these new lenses. That's your integration, essentially.
I joke around sometimes that because I don't really do a lot of medicine anymore either, because when it's interesting, medicine for me now is if I need to clear the cobwebs, if I recognize that there is a pattern that is showing up that is like an old recording generated when I was like 3 years old kind of thing. So I agree with you. I think this is important for people, especially folks who, like, I'm very curious about folks who get destabilized from large doses, because I think it's really important people understand the potential ramifications of any large dose psychedelic. Like, what does destabilization, how has it shown up for the people with whom you've worked?
Yeah, I've been pretty lucky that I've only had one person that was slightly destabilized for about 3 or 4 days. And then we were able to kind of get her back into kind of more of a baseline functioning reality. My wife was destabilized for a week on her second experience, and I'm sure she's okay with me sharing this, but hers was, again, she came from a very religious background. So her entire identity, the way that she viewed reality, the way that she viewed everything, the way that she'd always lived her life was kind of through this specific lens. And then in 15 minutes, that lens gets dissolved. And then you're like, oh, maybe all that isn't what I thought it is. And my whole entire life has been based on who am I now? So that's a really good example of somebody that could be. So people that I'm working with that have religious trauma could, and just in general, like I would jokingly say, so I'm in Iowa. If I went down to like a local Home Depot and just grabbed a regular Joe, right, that maybe watches football on the weekend and like does his thing, doesn't think about anything about non-duality, and I gave him a full release dose and it completely deconstructed his view on reality in 15 minutes, that's a lot, right? That's a lot for people. So, I mean, what we're seeing is there's like physical ramifications. I got a gentleman I'm working right now that has constant ringing in his ears, right? You have night terrors. There's a nurse that I'm working with now that she can't even pick up a book. She used to love reading. She can't pick up books. And again, to the point of folks needing like benzodiazepam, or other like medications to kind of get them back into a space. And, nobody knows exactly what's happening. I think, again, it's too much too fast. We're pushing through these protector parts. And it's just too much for some people. And so again, if you approach it slower, right, over a period of months, and then make that determination based on, like, I can tell how somebody responds to a medium to medium high dose. If they can't settle their nervous system in that experience, why on earth would I assume in a large experience they're going to be able to, again, have this offline non-dual experience and then come back into a deeply altered state and be okay with it? And that's my concern with the community. Again, I like the expression, the drive-by five. And I used to do this. That's how I was trained. I thought it was normal. We'd show up, serve 8 people a day, right? They're in for an hour and 15 minutes. They like, oh, that was amazing. They're gone. We don't know what trauma we left in our wake, right? Because we weren't integrating these people. It's once I started integrating these people that I'm like, oh, it wasn't as love and light as I thought it was. We didn't leave them in a better place like we thought we did. We actually destabilized a portion of them. And I think statistically what we're seeing is 3 or 4% of the people are being destabilized, but nobody's talking about it. It's always the love and light. You'll connect with God, your higher self. Again, beautiful. And that's one of the things that we really emphasize in the class is informed consent. Here's all the things that could happen to you. And you need to know that before you step into the experience. I haven't integrated one person where the informed consent was like, absolutely, this could destabilize you. Do we have a support network in place? Do we have a therapist that potentially you're working with? Like, what if it gets really bad? What's that look like? Right? And the answer I hear from the facilitators are, well, that could scare people away. This isn't McDonald's. I'm not trying to sell a 15 billion burgers, right? If we're trying to help people, it should start with do no harm. And they have to consent, and to consent, they have to be informed of all the potential outcomes and then make that decision. And if the answer is like, I don't think I'm ready for this experience, for me, beautiful. I'm going to go walk my dogs in the woods and enjoy nature, and my life goes on, because my identity isn't tied to being a facilitator. My livelihood isn't tied to being a facilitator. And so when you kind of mix those things together, I think we're creating a trickier situation.
Creating unsafe places. It's interesting. I've done a lot of psychedelic tourism to experience a variety of medicines. And I have always been very surprised at 2 things. People going for the experience with 0 scaffolding in place at home, 0 therapeutic, 0 coaching, 0 clergy, 0 family. Like, they're just kind of dropping in. I want to go do this cool thing. And yeah, I want to work on myself, but 0 understanding that the real change happens afterward. And also the premise, every time I've gone to a journey of some sort, and I still maintain my therapeutic relationship with my therapist, I've always kind of known that I'm going to be responsible for my experience. I'm going to own it. I'm going to navigate it. I'm going to be very aware of my dosage. I'm going to be very aware of everything that's happening. I think if you're going for a psychedelic experience for self-growth or for healing or for evolution, you should treat it the same way that you're going for physical therapy or you're going for an operate. Like all the normal thought that goes into planning any of those other experiences around your health should go into this. And we haven't had the opportunity yet, because everything is so new, I think, to really hammer that home to people, that's the care that you should put into this. And what I'm hearing from your protocol and from your program is that you're being very, very careful with your students to make sure they are expressing that to their clients. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, because I agree with everything you said. And I love the term scaffolding, right? Like you're right. A lot of folks don't have that when they step into the space. And yes, ultimately, the responsibility falls on the participant. But I also think sometimes, again, just from my own experience, desperation leads us to do risky things. And so I assume people coming to me that have some level of desperation, a gentleman I worked with a couple of weeks ago, suicidal, right? But also taking particular drugs and alcohol. Like I have to assume that he's not taking his own safety into consideration. So selfishly, I want to protect myself as well as protect them, right? So it's like, I just assume if somebody's coming to me that they're not doing their own research, that again, if they're bringing some level of desperation, that they're like, whatever you've got, I'll take it. Right? Like that's not like whatever you're going to do, I'll just do that because I'm not okay. And so I honor that as well. So to me, I take the onus of I'm going to do that for you, right? I'm going to make sure that you understand everything about this experience and the potential of that. So then I feel okay about you coming into the space because I don't want to take that risk. Right. So there's a selfish component of it is like, I want to protect myself as well. So I need to make sure that you have all the information and probably more than you need and are as prepared for this as we possibly can prepare you. Psychological evaluations, medical evaluation, like all the things. And then I could also make a determination, do I want to facilitate to you? Right? Because there's lots of facilitators. Like, do I want to take on that risk? So I'm with you. Ultimately, it does fall on them. But from a legal standpoint, as some of us in this space know, it's like it can come back and get us. So yeah, I recommend all the facilitators protect yourself as well as protect the clients, right?
Yeah. What's interesting, I think I did a video or two. I've said to people who are looking for facilitators, if you are not filling out an obnoxious amount of information about your health, psychological, physical, if you are not filling out a form that doesn't get on your nerves, that's a red flag. That's just my easy way of saying it shouldn't just be 3 questions. Like, if you are working with a practitioner who is very conscientious, who understands the space, there should be a number of forms to fill out regardless of the medicine. And in my opinion, it is a red flag if those things don't exist. It's more of a factory in and out kind of philosophy versus we're actually going to embrace you and take care of you throughout this. And taking care of you means we need to understand the snapshot of who you are right now, mentally and physically.
Yeah, because if the facilitator isn't going to put in the effort to protect even themselves from potential blowback, then they're not thinking of their own safety. They're for sure not thinking of your safety. Number one. And to me, this medicine, again, is ultimately different in the sense that holding space in general is super crucial, right? So I don't just give I don't train the students just to give the questionnaires. Like we should be having this type of conversation, right? Like I should be seeing you, you should be seeing me. I should be feeling what's happening in this conversation because as somebody that's ADHD, if you give me a questionnaire, I just kind of I'm feeling great, right? Like I want to ask you that and read the body language and have follow-ups. I want to create a relationship with you. So when we do step in the space, there's already some level of trust and understanding. Because ultimately, especially for men and women, but mostly in the women, you're going to be potentially offline in a full experience. Do you trust the space that you're walking into? Are you aware of what what the ceremony could potentially look like, or what the session could potentially look like. Are there going to be other facilitators? Are they male, female? Can I bring people? Are you filming that? Like, there's so much information that should be like flushed out prior to you just like, again, I just showed up, I laid on a tapestry, did 2 large doses of what I didn't even know what it was. And they were like, we got other people coming. We're going to have to move you to the side. That literally was my experience. And I thought that was like the normal thing. I was like, wow, that was intense. I guess I get in my rental car and go back to my hotel now, right? Didn't have 10 seconds of conversation with the facilitator. He didn't even speak English. He's like, just point down, like, let's do it.
Everybody listening, that's not the experience you want.
No,
I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah, that was great.
No, but those are the questions. These are some of the leading people in the space, right? A lot of the videos I show my students, these are like the top names, and I'm not picking on them. This is kind of their traditional model. I'm like, does this look safe to you? Now that you know what you know? Like, no, now that I know what I know, I would never step into that original space, right? But also, if you're a female, there is assault happening in these spaces. I'm integrating these women, right? So can I bring a friend? Can I bring a witness? Can we like I record all my sessions, period. And if you don't want me to record it, I'm not your guy. And it's because my biggest fear as a male is for me to have to put my hands on you to keep you safe in some capacity, right? And you, in an altered state, view that as something it wasn't. So now I can say, well, let's look at the tape, right? I had to roll you on your side or lift you up. So are you recording the session? Can I have a friend there that's witnessing what's happening in the space? Oh, I'm not allowed to bring friends, right? Like all those things to me are like, those aren't the spaces that I'm training people to create.
Yeah, no, my first 5 experience, I explicitly asked if I could have a friend because I just had issues with men and trauma in general. And the answer was absolutely. And immediately I was much more comfortable. Yeah. I mean, even though he sat there and the friend I brought was like bored out of his mind because nothing happened. But yeah, knowing that. All right. So Kirby, I personally can ask you like 10 million questions. What's the question that I haven't asked you yet that I should have asked you?
That's a good question. Again, I think I'll just, if it's kind of moving towards the closing, I just want to encourage people that are either in this space, or, potentially moving into this space, or even in, other psychedelic spaces. But this space, again, is unique to me than other classical psychedelics because of the size of the experience. And again, that potential offline component. I just want you to question everything that you were trained. And if you go back to that and say, yeah, actually, I like the way that is, perfectly fine. But again, this medicine's 40 years old. The stepwise protocol is fine. But if you've been facilitating long enough, there's no question that you've facilitated this experience to people who within 3 weeks, a month, are back to their baseline personality. That's kind of a waste. What's the point of that? You're taking all this risk for no real reward, right? Does that make the most sense? Does it make sense to work with people over a period of time and then working with them in between these? Because that's the protocol essentially. It's like, let's work with small to medium doses, and in between, what type of practices are we doing to expand our consciousness? And so each time we come back into the space, we may do 3 or 4 smaller medium sessions at a time, expanding our consciousness, creating these little flag points that you could find them outside of it, and building and building and building and building until finally we're like, okay, are we ready for this larger experience? But even if we don't do the larger experience, we've already expanded this consciousness. We already questioned our identity, right? We've just used this medicine to kind of speed that process up. And the protocol could be done with, I've got 3 clients right now that have used psilocybin to do it. Obviously, my wife's a ketamine-assisted therapist. That's what I'm also trained in. So we've been using it with ketamine. It's just, again, helping people recognize that they view themselves through this identity. And if you can show them that and show them that they're this program, they can start unwinding it. But I'd say specifically for this medicine in this space, question everything. And that's okay, right? I'm not saying just disagree with everything to disagree with it, but you should question everything. It's 40 years old. I think we're in a position now that as this medicine continues to move forward, that we have an opportunity to create different protocols and create different approaches. And that's beautiful. It doesn't have this lineage like an ayahuasca or some of these others. We get to create it however we want to create it. So think outside the box, right? So really not a question I could think of, but I know that was more of just a statement.
Well, I think the question would have been, what should practitioners be thinking moving forward? And your answer is think outside the box. This is a newish medicine. We have traditionally kind of done I use the phrasing spray and pray. And let's really, as we're learning about different modalities and in a trauma-informed way, let's figure out what works for, the Jill Sitnicks of the world, what works for the John Smiths of the world, because, it's not a one size fit all. So let's think outside the box. I gave you the question, but you gave me a really good answer to give me that question.
Your question was great.
All right. So you've got a book, you've got trainings, you've got facilitations. Kirby, where can people find all this stuff?
Boy, I wish I was better at marketing and websites and that as much as the other things. We've got 2 books on Amazon. If you just type in my name, you'll find them. One is it's essentially the facilitation manual that we use for the class. So how are we training students? And it touches on the kind of the 6-month protocol in there. And then I want to say Friday last week, the embodiment protocol, which is the very specific protocol of this is what we do daily, this is what we do weekly, written by myself and my wife. I think that just came out. And at the back of that is an opportunity if you want to take like a master class in it. So really kind of targeting is not the best word, but yeah, kind of targeting therapists and facilitators that are looking for a more trauma-informed and slower approach to working with this medicine. Because, I mean, the idea is if I showed up to my psychiatrist and I had depression, he doesn't start me on the largest dose of depression medicine, right? He's like, let's find like the minimum effective dose. And that's the same type of approach we're taking. So if you're a therapist and you're already working with people and you're going to work with them over a period of time, we can use this type of protocol to just kind of fit nicely into what we're doing as therapists. And so I think that'd be very, very helpful for folks. But our website is mindscapeinstitute.org. I forget what our link tree is, but Mindscape something link tree, you could probably find it there. But again, I'll get better at adding some of these things to the website. But anybody really, I'm pretty hands-on. Write me, send me an email. It's Stephan Kirby at Gmail or Mindscape Institute at Proton Mail. I'm sure you'll have that in the description. But just send me a note and say what you're working on. If I can support you, I'd absolutely love to support you. If you're interested in a class, great. We could have that conversation. But yeah, I don't really have any wares to peddle right now. It's just, again, if we've got something that would be beneficial to people, I'd be more than happy to kind of share that with them and see if it's a good fit.
I think you did just great. I will do my very best to have all that information in the show notes. And I think maybe next time I see you, you might have to sign some books. That's all I'm saying.
Wow. I appreciate you taking the time with me.
This was fantastic. I honestly could be on this podcast for another 2 hours, but I think our listeners have other things to do in their lives. But Kirby, I'm going to probably invite you back at some point because I think the concept, I liken it to if you're going to teach somebody to swim, you don't throw them in the deep end, you kind of step them into the pool. Yes. And I think this I think this is an important, for people who are especially new to psychedelics, I think it's really important that this message gets to them. So we'll probably have you back at some point. But thank you so much for today. I really loved this conversation.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you.
One of the best parts of this podcasting gig is that I get to talk to people who have vast experience in different parts of the psychedelic space. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I guarantee I'm going to have Kirby back because I had about 10 different questions that we didn't even get to. So I'm looking forward to that. If you like this content, head on over to psychedelicscene.com, where you'll find a whole bunch of psychedelic culture in terms of, the more recent healing, arts, music, lots of interesting essays, things of that sort. If you like the content, consider buying Jason, our founder, a little cup of coffee, because he is the one that keeps the lights on. Until next time, take care.